Most people believe that change begins with effort. They believe that if they try harder, think more positively, or push themselves with enough discipline, their lives will eventually shift. And yet, despite years of effort, many find themselves repeating the same patterns, feeling the same emotions, and facing the same struggles again and again. This is not because they are weak, lazy, or incapable. It is because they are attempting to change the surface of their lives without first changing the level of awareness from which their lives are being lived. Awareness is the foundation of all transformation. Before behavior can change, before habits can dissolve, before emotions can stabilize, awareness must first illuminate what has been operating unconsciously. Without awareness, the mind is running programs that were written long ago, often in moments of stress, fear, or emotional intensity. These programs quietly shape perception, reaction, and identity. And because they operate beneath conscious attention, they feel like who we are rather than what we have learned. To understand why awareness is the beginning of change, we must understand how the brain and body work together to create what feels like a stable personality. The brain is designed to predict. It constantly scans the environment, compares the present moment to past experiences, and prepares the body for what it believes is coming next. This predictive function is essential for survival, but it comes at a cost. When past experiences are repeatedly used as the primary reference point for the future, the brain begins to live in memory rather than possibility. Every repeated thought strengthens a neural pathway. Every repeated emotional reaction reinforces a chemical state in the body. Over time, these patterns become automatic. The body learns to anticipate certain emotions. The brain learns to expect certain outcomes. Eventually, the person no longer needs an external trigger to feel stressed, anxious, or unworthy. The body itself becomes the trigger. At this point, the person is no longer thinking their thoughts, they are being thought by them. This is what it means to live unconsciously. It does not mean a lack of intelligence or awareness in daily tasks. It means that the inner world is largely unmanaged and unobserved. Reactions happen faster than reflection. Emotions arise without inquiry. Thoughts feel factual rather than conditional. And because the nervous system is familiar with these internal states, it clings to them, even when they cause suffering. Change cannot occur here, because there is no distance between the observer and the pattern. You cannot change what you believe you are. You cannot interrupt a habit you cannot see. You cannot release an emotional state you are identified with. Awareness creates separation. It creates space. And that space is where choice becomes possible. The moment you become aware of a thought as a thought, something remarkable happens in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, the region associated with observation, regulation, and intentional choice, becomes active. At the same time, the emotional centers of the brain begin to calm. This is not spiritual theory. This is measurable neuroscience. Awareness shifts brain activity from reactive circuits to regulatory ones. Simply noticing changes the system. But awareness must be genuine. It cannot be rushed or forced. Many people attempt awareness with the hidden agenda of control. They watch their thoughts only to judge them. They observe their emotions only to suppress them. This is not awareness, it is resistance. True awareness is neutral. It observes without commentary. It allows without agreement. It sees clearly without needing to change anything in the moment. This is why awareness often feels uncomfortable at first. When you stop reacting in familiar ways, the body experiences uncertainty. The nervous system has learned that certain emotions, even painful ones, are predictable. When awareness interrupts these patterns, the body feels exposed. It searches for the old response. It urges reaction. And if awareness is not sustained, the system quickly returns to what it knows. But if awareness is maintained, calmly, patiently, without judgment, something profound occurs. The body begins to learn that it can survive without the old emotional response. The brain begins to decouple the association between stimulus and reaction. Over time, this decoupling weakens the old neural circuits. What once felt automatic begins to feel optional. This is the beginning of change. Not dramatic, not explosive, subtle, quiet, internal. Most people wait for life to force awareness upon them through crisis, illness, or loss. These events disrupt the familiar patterns so intensely that the person is forced to reflect, forced to question, forced to see themselves differently. But awareness does not need to arrive through pain. It can be cultivated intentionally. And when it is cultivated intentionally, change becomes proactive rather than reactive. Awareness starts with noticing. Noticing thoughts as they arise. Noticing emotional shifts in the body. Noticing patterns of reaction without immediately explaining or justifying them. This noticing creates a new relationship with the inner world. Instead of being immersed in experience, you begin to witness it. Instead of being consumed by emotion, you become curious about it. Curiosity is a powerful signal to the brain. It shifts the nervous system out of survival mode and into learning mode. When curiosity replaces judgment, the brain becomes flexible. Neuroplasticity increases. The system becomes open to change. Awareness paired with curiosity is transformative because it tells the brain that the present moment is safe enough to explore rather than defend against. As awareness deepens, you begin to recognize that many of your reactions are not responses to the present moment, but echoes of the past. A tone of voice triggers an emotional memory. A facial expression activates an old belief. A delay or uncertainty ignites a familiar stress response. Awareness allows you to see these connections without being pulled into them. And when you see clearly, you reclaim power. Not power over others, but power over your own internal state. You begin to recognize that while you cannot always control external events, you can regulate how your nervous system interprets them. This regulation is not suppression. It is coherence. It is alignment between mind and body. As awareness stabilizes, the body begins to move out of chronic stress chemistry. Cortisol levels decrease. Heart rhythms become more coherent. Brain waves shift toward more integrative states. This is not imagined. This is physiological. Awareness practiced consistently reshapes the body's baseline state. At this stage, many people notice that their reactions feel slower. There is a pause where there was once impulse. In that pause, new choices appear. The old identity begins to loosen. You are no longer defined solely by how you have always reacted. You begin to experience yourself as the one who observes rather than the one who is trapped in reaction. This shift is subtle but life-altering. Because once you identify as the observer, the patterns lose their authority. They may still arise, but they no longer dictate behavior. Awareness becomes a stabilizing force, a grounding presence, a reference point that is not dependent on circumstances. Change accelerates from here, not because you force it, but because the system is no longer reinforcing the old patterns. The brain begins to explore new possibilities. New emotional states feel accessible. New behaviors feel natural rather than forced. Identity becomes flexible. This is why awareness must come before intention, before goals, before vision. Without awareness, intention is filtered through unconscious programs. With awareness, Intention becomes creative, directed, alive. In the next part of this lecture, we will go deeper into how awareness reshapes identity, how the body releases stored emotional memory, and how sustained awareness rewires the brain at a structural level. We will explore why repetition without awareness fails, and how presence becomes the gateway to lasting transformation. For now, understand this: awareness is not something you add to your life. It is something you return to. It is your natural state before conditioning, before habit, before identity. And when you return to it consistently, change is no longer something you chase. It becomes something that unfolds. As awareness stabilizes, something deeper begins to shift beneath the surface of conscious thought. It is no longer just the mind that is being observed. It is the body itself that begins to reveal its stored history. The body is not merely a passive vehicle for the mind. It is a living record of past experiences. Every emotional reaction that was never fully processed, every moment of stress that was endured rather than resolved, leaves a physiological imprint. Over time, these imprints become the body's baseline state. This is why people often feel emotion that seem disconnected from their current circumstances. The body remembers even when the conscious mind has forgotten. Awareness brings these stored states into consciousness, not to relive them, but to release them. When awareness meets sensation without resistance, the nervous system begins to reorganize. This is not an intellectual process. It is a biological one. Most people attempt to think their way out of emotional patterns. They analyze, rationalize, and explain. But emotions are not resolved through explanation. They are resolved through presence. When an emotional state arises and is met with awareness rather than reaction, the body receives new information. It learns that the present moment is not the past. It learns that survival is not required. Slowly, the emotional charge dissipates. This process requires patience. The nervous system does not release patterns it believes are necessary for protection overnight. Awareness must be consistent, gentle, non-threatening. Each time you remain present with an emotion without acting it out, you weaken its hold. Each time you observe a reaction without identifying with it, you reclaim energy that was once bound to the past. As this continues, identity begins to change. Identity is not fixed. It is a collection of repeated states. A person believes they are anxious because they repeatedly experience anxiety. They believe they are insecure because insecurity has become familiar. But when awareness interrupts repetition, identity loses its solidity. You begin to see that who you thought you were was largely a set of conditioned responses. This realization can feel destabilizing at first. The mind seeks certainty. It wants a story. It wants a label. Awareness dissolves rigid stories. It introduces openness. But this openness is not emptiness. It is potential. It is the space where new states of being can emerge. As awareness deepens, you may notice moments of stillness between thoughts. These moments are not the absence of mind. They are the presence of consciousness itself. In these moments, the brain shifts into coherent states. Creativity increases. Insight arises spontaneously. The nervous system experiences rest that is deeper than sleep. This is not something you force. It happens naturally when awareness is sustained without effort. Change accelerates here because the brain is no longer dominated by survival circuits. It begins to operate from integration rather than defense. The body exits chronic stress. Energy that was once consumed by emotional reactivity becomes available for growth, healing, and creativity. Importantly, awareness does not remove challenges from life. It changes how challenges are experienced. Difficult situations no longer define identity. They become events rather than evidence. Awareness creates resilience because it prevents the nervous system from collapsing into old patterns under pressure. As awareness becomes your default state, you begin to sense when you are drifting back into unconsciousness. You notice subtle contractions, emotional shifts, mental loops, and because you notice early, you can return to presence without drama. This is mastery, not control but sensitivity. In the final part of this lecture, we will explore how sustained awareness shapes the future, how intention arises naturally from presence, and how living in awareness transforms not only the individual but the way they engage with the world. When awareness becomes embodied, the future is no longer driven by the past. This is one of the most profound shifts a human being can experience. The brain, no longer locked into prediction based solely on memory, becomes receptive to possibility. This does not mean life becomes uncertain or chaotic. It means it becomes creative, responsive, alive. From this state, intention arises differently. Intention is no longer an attempt to escape the present moment. It becomes an expression of coherence. When the nervous system is regulated and the mind is clear, intention feels natural, effortless, aligned. Action flows from awareness rather than compulsion. This is why people who live with sustained awareness often appear calm, grounded, and purposeful. They are not free from emotion, but they are not governed by it. They are not detached from life, but deeply engaged with it. Awareness does not remove passion, it refines it. It directs energy where it is most effective. Over time, awareness reshapes perception itself. You begin to see the world less through the lens of fear and more through the lens of understanding. Other people's behavior is no longer taken personally. Circumstances are no longer interpreted as permanent. The nervous system remains flexible, adaptable. This has profound effects on health. When the body is no longer trapped in chronic stress, systems begin to repair themselves. Immune function improves. Inflammation decreases. Sleep deepens. These changes are not miraculous, they are logical. The body heals when it is not constantly preparing for threat. Awareness also transforms relationships. When you are aware of your own internal state, you stop projecting it onto others. You listen more clearly. You respond rather than react. You create emotional safety not by controlling others, but by regulating yourself. This safety invites connection. Perhaps the greatest gift of awareness is freedom from unconscious repetition. You are no longer living the same emotional day on different calendar dates. Each moment becomes fresh, new, unburdened by expectation. This does not mean the absence of memory. It means memory no longer dictates experience. Living in awareness is not about perfection. You will still drift. You will still react. But the difference is that you will notice. And noticing is everything. Because awareness always brings you back to choice. Ultimately, awareness reconnects you with your fundamental nature. Beneath thought, beneath emotion, beneath identity, there is presence. Stable, clear, alive. This presence is not created. It is remembered. And when it becomes the ground of your life, change is no longer something you pursue. It is something that unfolds naturally. Awareness is the beginning of change, because awareness is the end of unconsciousness. And when unconsciousness ends, life begins anew.